gathered to celebrate not just jewishfiction.net, but Jewish fiction. But what is Jewish fiction? And of course, what is more Jewish than opening an evening event with a question? What is Jewish fiction? Is Jewish fiction fiction written by Jews? Is Jewish fiction fiction written about Jews? Is Jewish fiction fiction written by Jews about Jews? And if so, what exactly does about Jews mean? Is any story with a main character named Jacob or Sarah inherently a Jewish story? These questions, before proceeding, this is Linda Lipsky, who I mentioned earlier, who's on our editorial board, and thank you very much. These questions obviously have many answers depending on who you ask. One way to respond is by defining not what Jewish fiction is, but what it is not. I sometimes tell the story of an author I know who wanted to get published in a Jewish publication. So she took a story that she had written that had absolutely no Jewish content, and she changed the name of the main character to a Jewish, recognizably Jewish name. And she changed the food the character was eating from a donut to a quince. And she got her piece into that particular Jewish literary journal, the name of which I shall not mention. Something like this would obviously never get into jewishfiction.net, because this is not a Jewish story. The Jewishness in that story is nothing more than what I think of as culinary Judaism. Throw in a blintz, and it's a Jewish story. So this is what Jewish fiction is not, but then what is it? Many thinkers, scholars, literary pundits, critics, and writers have asked themselves this same question, and hundreds, maybe thousands, of articles and books on this subject have been written. Do not worry, I'm not going to review the whole literature for you at all, but I'm going to share a couple of tidbits of interesting things that people have said. In particular, just three Jewish writers' responses to this question. Allegra Goodman, and think about how you feel about these answers, because we're going to have discussion after, and I'm very interested in your point of view. Allegra Goodman says, I define Jewish fiction as fiction about Jewish people or ideas. I don't define Jewish fiction by the author. Therefore, one of my favorite works of Jewish fiction is Daniel Deronda by George Eliot. From Aleph Beit Yoshua, who is in the current issue, by the way, of jewishfiction.net, we have an excerpt there from his latest novel, Retrospective. This is Yoshua's response to that question. Jewish languages such as Hebrew, Yiddish, or Ladino, for me, are most important when defining Jewish literature. This may be provocative, but when an Arab writes in Hebrew, like Said Kashua, he is participating in Jewish writing through the language. Kashua is part of Jewish literature because by writing in Hebrew, he's utilizing the context of classical Jewish writing. I see some faces, don't agree. Can we define, he says, the writings of Jews in a European language as Jewish? Jews who write about Jewish matters or have Jewish protagonists can be classified as Jewish writing. However, when non-Jews write about the same Jewish themes, they're not Jewish literature. Now, Jews writing about non-Jewish topics is also not Jewish, but it would be Jewish if it were written in a Jewish language. If a writer is Jewish but not writing on Jewish subjects, the work is not Jewish literature. For example, with all our desire to include Kafka as a writer of Jewish literature, in my mind, he is not. Last writer I'll quote is Marge Piercy, who says, not all fiction written by Jewish writers should be called Jewish fiction. I myself write novels in which there are no Jewish characters or people identified as such. The novels that I would consider Jewish fiction are those that have Jewish content. Novels that deal with the lives of Jews, whether cultural or religious, and matters that pertain to that, such as the Golem novels or the Dybbuk, which deal with folklore. My own work, Gone to Soldiers, which deals with the Jewish resistance during World War II, is a Jewish novel. This last perspective comes quite close to my own and also coincides with the viewpoint of Ruth Weiss. In the modern Jewish canon, Ruth wrote, Jewish literature is literature that you know is Jewish when you, where both, Jewish literature is literature where both the authors and the main character know and let the reader know that they are Jewish. In her view, Jewish literature is literature that you know is Jewish when you see it because it is, quote, centrally Jewish. Centrally Jewish meaning reflective somehow of Jewish experience, either Jewish history or Jewish consciousness. Of course, this is not simple either. What is Jewish consciousness? It can encompass religious, cultural, political, nationalist, Zionist dimensions, identities, and more. But in, quote, Jewish fiction, there is a central Jewishness to the main character. This Jewishness can be either embedded in the character's perspective and consciousness and or in the themes with which he or she struggles. But his or her Jewishness is inextricable. You can't pull it out, removing it like a blintz and still leave the story or the novel standing. So this definition refers to the issue of consciousness and also, quote, themes with which she or he struggles or engages. So this brings us to another question, and we're almost done with these reflections, which are the introduction to our evening. What is a Jewish theme? So many scholars, too, have commented on this, offering long lists. One person, D.G. Myers, refers to fundamental Jewish themes, including elements like historical context, immigration and assimilation, politics and religion, Zionism and the Holocaust, and of course there are many more. Broadly speaking, one might say that Jewish themes include all the primary concerns and aspirations of the Jewish people, whether this be Jewish experience in the past, present, or future. To offer an example close to home for me, obviously, my novel, Fields of Exile, which as Valentina mentioned will be coming out next year with Dundurn, is to the best of my knowledge the first novel to deal as a central theme with the issue of anti-Israelism in the academe, obviously a topic of concern for many Jews, excuse me, in Israel, in Canada and beyond. And in that case, if you were to take the main theme out of this novel, you'd have absolutely nothing left. So this is just one example of what Jewish fiction